cold silence hangs over St. Mercy's Convent, broken only by the faint echo of footsteps that shouldn't exist. Students swear they hear someone whispering their names in the empty hallways. And every night, one door creaks open on its own room 13, the old prayer room no one dares to enter. They say a nun once lived there, a kind woman who suddenly changed and died in a way no one fully understands. But sometimes, late at night, her shadow still glides across the chapel floor. Now, if you ever feel a cold breath on your neck while walking alone, don't turn around. She's already right behind you. I had no idea any of this when I first arrived at St. Mercy's. To me, it was just a quiet old school with strict rules and too many locked rooms. The building felt ancient, its walls heavy with secrets, but I convinced myself it was only my imagination. The students avoided the West Wing, teachers ignored any questions about the past, and the chapel bell rang at strange hours even when no one was inside. Slowly, I began to realize that the rumors weren't just ghost stories, they were warnings. And by the time I understood why everyone feared the old nun, it was already too late to turn back. It started subtly at first, lights flickering when no one was near, whispers that seemed to echo from empty hallways. The students laughed it off as old wiring or a prank, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. At first, it was just a shadow gliding past the chapel window, but then I noticed her. The nun. She was always just at the edge of vision, watching silently with her dark, unblinking eyes. Every time I tried to approach, she would vanish as if swallowed by the shadows. The atmosphere around the convent grew heavier with each passing day. Doors would slam for no reason. Footsteps echoed in deserted corridors, and faint chanting could be heard during the dead of night. One evening, while heading to the library, I saw her standing at the end of the hallway, her face hidden beneath the dark folds of her habit. The cold emanating from her presence made the hairs on my neck stand on end. It wasn't just fear, it was something deeper, something unnatural. Even the bravest students refused to walk the halls alone after sunset. Objects moved without explanation, books falling from shelves, crucifixes tilting on walls, and mirrors reflecting moments that weren't real. It was as if the building itself was alive with her presence, warning anyone who dared enter that something malevolent was lurking. It wasn't a mere ghost, it was something far more sinister, patient, and intelligent. Curiosity eventually got the better of me, despite the growing dread. One rainy afternoon, I ventured into the old library, where dust-covered shelves held forgotten texts and journals from decades past. Among them, I discovered a tattered diary hidden behind a row of prayer books, its pages yellowed and brittle. It belonged to Sister Agatha, the nun who once taught at St. Mercy's. The entries began innocently enough, chronicling lessons and prayers, but soon, the words twisted into something darker. Sister Agatha wrote of visions, of voices guiding her to perform rituals in the chapel basement, invoking powers beyond human comprehension. There were sketches of strange symbols, inverted crosses, and cryptic diagrams that made the hairs on my arms rise. One passage hinted that she had crossed a line, seeking immortality, trapping her spirit in the convent long after her death. As I read further, the diary's tone became desperate, almost pleading, as if Sister Agatha had realized the horror she had unleashed. It became terrifyingly clear that this was no ordinary haunting. The nun spirit wasn't wandering aimlessly, was hunting, seeking someone to fill her place, someone to continue her work. The realization made my blood run cold. Every strange sound, every shadow at the corner of my vision suddenly had a purpose. She was watching, calculating, waiting. What began as a series of unexplainable events transformed into an undeniable truth. The evil nun's presence was real, and I had stumbled straight into her web. Once I understood the truth, the haunting escalated. The evil nun's appearances grew bolder and more aggressive. At night, I would hear her footsteps pacing outside my door, slow and deliberate, as if she was counting the seconds until I made a mistake. Mirrors became portals of terror-catching glimpses of her face where there should be none, her eyes following me even when I looked away. Shadows shifted unnaturally, creeping along walls and ceilings, forming shapes that seemed almost human. One evening, I found a friend missing. The door to her room was wide open, the bed untouched, and a lingering chill filled the air. Panic spread among the students as whispers of the nuns hunting intensified. The chapel basement became the epicenter of these encounters. Strange, glowing symbols appeared on the floor, and the walls echoed with distant chanting. One night, I saw her fully hovering above the ground, her dark robes flowing unnaturally, a cruel, twisted smile on her face. The sound of her voice, both soft and commanding, reverberated in my mind, calling me to join her. Attempts to leave the building were futile. Hallways twisted, leading me back to the same terrifying corridors. It was as if the convent itself was alive, bending reality to trap us. Fear became paralyzing, yet determination grew. I knew I had to confront her. Escaping blindly was no longer an option. The evil nun was no longer content with watching from the shadows. She wanted us, and she would stop at nothing to claim her next victim. The confrontation was inevitable. Guided by the diary, I descended into the chapel basement, heart hammering with fear. The air was thick and cold, carrying the faint scent of decay. Candlelight flickered across the walls, casting long, grotesque shadows that seemed to move independently. There, at the center of a circle drawn with salt and symbols, floated the evil nun. Her presence was overpowering, a tangible darkness that pressed against my chest. She chanted in a language I didn't recognize, the words vibrating through the floor. Shadows stretched from her figure, crawling toward me like living tendrils. Summoning every ounce of courage, I began the ritual described in the diary, reversing the symbols, reciting the incantation, sprinkling holy water. The room reacted violently. Wind howled, candles exploded, and her voice rose to an ear-splitting scream. The ground shook beneath my feet, and her form flickered between human and monstrous. For a moment, I feared it wouldn't be enough, that I would become the next soul trapped in her endless torment. But as the final words left my lips, a blinding light erupted from the circle, engulfing the basement. The evil nun shrieked, her figure dissolving into the shadows, and then silence fell. The oppressive weight lifted, replaced by a calm I hadn't felt in weeks. I stumbled out, exhausted and shaken, unsure if the nightmare had truly ended or if it merely waited for the next unsuspecting soul to wander into its grasp. For a few days, the convent seemed almost normal. The halls no longer echoed with whispers, doors stayed closed, and the heavy, suffocating air lifted. Students returned to their routines, cautiously optimistic that the nightmare had ended. I tried to convince myself it was over, that the evil nun had finally been banished, but deep down, a lingering unease gnawed at me, a feeling that someone or something was still watching. Then, one evening, as I walked past the chapel, I noticed the faint outline of a figure at the far end. A nun, her habit dark and flowing, her head tilted slightly as if studying me. My heart froze. The air grew cold again, and the faintest whisper brushed against my ear. Class isn't dismissed yet. I ran, refusing to look back, but I could feel her presence following me through the halls, patient and unyielding, too. I realized then that some darkness can never be fully destroyed, only delayed. The convent remained standing, seemingly peaceful, yet I knew better. Somewhere in the shadows, the evil nun waits, ready to strike again. And I also knew one terrifying truth. No matter how far I ran, the memory of her hand, the fear she brings, would never leave me.